Welcome to another episode of Pistons of Fury. In this episode, we're tackling the second half of our Borgeson steering box install on our LS Mopar swap. Okay, so one of the things I need to do in terms of getting the engine compartment back together is get my steering finally set up. So I've had a few videos in the past where I've installed the steering box, the new Borgeson unit. I've also run all the plumbing in a separate video, so this video is actually going to be kind of restoration of the steering column. I need to convert it from column shift to essentially what will ultimately be floor shift in this car, which means shaving a bunch of stuff off of here and generally just reconditioning this thing. I could buy a new one for a couple $100, but this works just fine. It steers. It's not aftermarket, so I know that my original steering wheel fits and all of that's good. I just need to purchase a few OEM parts. Namely, there's a rubber seal that I pulled off of here, which kind of keeps everything from, well, this is actually part of it. That right there is the center. And then I need to remove all the column shift stuff that's within the column. So we're going to get started up here. It looks like there's 2 bolts, and that'll give me access to the inside of the column. I should actually be able to pull everything off. And yeah, we'll just go from there. Got a lot of restoration painting in this one. Alright, so we've got a plan of attack for this thing. So basically how this works is you've got this main column, which is just like any other steering column, but on the inside, because of the column shift, you have this tube that runs down the length of it, and I've got it clamped in here, so I'm not going to show the bottom. But effectively what happens is this is a collar, and your shifter normally comes out of here, your column shifter comes out of this side, and turns the column. So what we need to do to convert this to a manual, to a non-column shifted setup, is basically come in here and weld the actual column, or not weld, I'm going to weld, that's the solution route I'm taking, but basically you've got to secure this inner column to the outer steering column, or the inner sleeve to the outer column. And the way we're going to do that is we have this bracket right here, which this top piece kind of screws into, and then we've got this outer column here. I believe it's all, I'm hoping this is all just cast steel and not aluminum or something that's not weldable. So what I'm going to do is basically come in here, wire brush this out, get it all cleaned up, and then we're going to weld this bracket right here to the inner sleeve so that it doesn't move, and then we're going to weld right here to these 2 points and secure all of that. So that is the current plan of attack here, and that should get everything secure. And then I'll basically come out, and there's this little extension piece for the column shifter, so I'm going to grind that off, get it flush, probably just put some body filler or some equivalent in there, and then we should be all set. And I've got a few parts I have to order for this thing, just some gaskets that look pretty old, but once I get that done, I should be able to put everything back together. And what I'm actually going to do is, let's see, I don't know if it's kind of out of focus, but there we go. So basically I'm gonna leave this window. A lot of times when guys do this, they kind of chop this window off, but then that leaves you with a big gap back here, and it doesn't really mount flush. So what I'm gonna do is probably come in and do like a little LED setup, maybe with some notification lights, or even like a PRND 321 or something, you know, for the column shift. But anyway, I like this little window. It's right there on the top of the steering column, so it's actually kind of cool to put something in the future. So I'm just going to leave that because I kind of like it. So anyway, we're going to get this cleaned up, and then we'll get to welding. Okay, so I got the column kind of assembled, mocked up, put back together. Didn't really tighten down the steering wheel, that's why you see this gap here. When it's on for real, that gap will be closed and look like it's supposed to look. So next thing I need to do is get this back in the car and mount it up so that I can start to see basically how much of the end of that steering shaft I'm going to have to cut off to mount to my Borgeson steering box. So we're back in the car. That's where we're going. And it's still an issue because my floor is still all cut up and a jagged edge and it's dirty. It's like the part of the car now that I hate being in, unlike the engine compartment, which is great. Anyway, rambling. We're going to get this in the car and we're going to see how it aligns on the firewall. So who's ready for an update? I know I am. Okay, so here's where we are. We have, kind of in reverse order, as you saw on camera, got this filled in. Normally I would have tried to do something a little bit higher quality instead of just filling it in with filler if it were going to see moisture and things like that, but this will actually be just okay. So got it mostly flattened down while the filler was still kind of soft, so that was good because I had a lot of filler layered up on here. So that will be good. We are going to sand this whole thing down and prime and paint, just rattle can stuff. You know, again, this isn't a super high wear item. And if it gets scratched, it's going to be mostly under the dash, so it'll be okay. So what you do now is, you saw before that, you saw me kind of putting this back in the car, test fitting, and actually I had to chop with this Borgeson box. You actually have to chop a little bit off of your stock steering column. So basically where it ended up on this B-body Dodge 1966 model year, basically where the steering column went to this flat piece. So it transitions from full round to a machine flat surface, and basically if you cut it off there, it puts it in the ideal stock position inside the car, and all is good. The other added bonus is that I actually have, I don't know if I can get this here. There we go. You'll see there's actually a pin that's in the stock column that holds that coupler on, and it actually lines up perfectly with one of the holes in this Borgeson coupler. Lines up perfectly with that one, so I'm going to go ahead and drill a pin, or not drill, I'm going to basically hit a pin with a hammer into that hole, and that'll kind of set me in place, and then I'll be able to drill these other two holes. So with the Borgeson coupler, you've got 3 holes, and they recommend that you do all 3. You could also just weld this if you want to put your life in your own hands, which a lot of times in these kind of projects you have to, but in this case I think we're going to drill and pin as they recommend. So that's next. I'm going to drive that pin in, and then I'll drill the other 2 holes with the drill press. And here we have it. This is the completed Borgeson steering box installation. So I've got the steering column all installed. I've got my steering coupler joint, U-joint kind of thing, locked into place. What I'll probably have to do is come back once I get the car back on the ground and driving and reposition the steering wheel. So the cool thing is that the steering wheel is, well, not cool part is that the steering wheel is notched, right? It's kind of keyed, so it can only be adjusted one way. But the steering coupler, the U-joint thing that goes into the steering box, is not keyed, so that can actually be rotated so that you can align the steering wheel that way. So a little bit of a pain because I'll have to slightly pull the steering column out and back in to reposition that, but could be worse. So next up is, let's see, I guess I will finish plumbing the lines for the cooler so that I don't have to do that when the engine is in, at least the kind of the low side, or maybe it's the high side, I don't know. Anyway, I've got some more work to do to link up the cooler, which is right here, and then the reservoir as well, but a whole bunch of other stuff has to happen before that for the steering to be complete. But anyway, this will link up nicely to the setup that I have with the engine and the steering, power steering pump, so all good there. So pretty glad to have this done, and now it's on to the next thing, whatever that may be. So join me in the next video as we start to put more stuff back together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.